I think most footy fans can recognise this, Sydney.
It's going to get a shot.
Almost unbeatable this time last season.
Did we need to kick it? We lost the game. It could work out the slenderest of percentages. Must kick the goal. You just have to from now. Good boy.
And the crowd give him a cheer. Thanks for that, Joe.
Alrighty, hello, welcome to the CREEDCAST. My name is David, and as always, thank you for joining us as we get ready to dissect our round 15 shit show against the Sydney Swans on Saturday afternoon. Oh yes, your Port Adelaide Football Club, much like the fall of Singapore in 1942, the British, a much larger force, but really just kind of meekly fell over as the Japanese visitors to Singapore took over swiftly and with just far too much power. And the power was off for us on Saturday as we really just, shit the bed. It was rough. We were all in a pretty terrible mood. Jamie, good evening. By the way, I'll just mention the score as I usually do. I said off air I was ad-libbing this, and I've already lost where I was going. But the final score, of course, was 7-10-52 for your Port Adelaide Football Club to 9-17. Count all those points. 17 points, 71. It could be far, far worse. The X score is quite shocking. But Jamie, good evening. I know we've both been pretty flat since that game on Saturday. So how are we doing?
How you going, Dave? Hello, everyone listening or watching. Therapy is yet again in session, unfortunately. Everyone's getting their money's worth for their therapy sessions this year. But I'm still in. I think there's a whole mixture of seasonal depression plus end of football season depression, because it certainly feels like we've come to the end of the line. But look, I've been better. I've definitely been better, but I'm alive, so it is what it is.
Yeah, we live to fight another day, and we live to watch Port Adelaide lose another day. But yeah, Saturday it was immediate from the off. I think there was just something off, before we get to the lines and all that. Just as a general thought, whether it be the turnover for the first goal, I won't, not too much blame on each other. But it's just that kind of symbolizes how and there was just disposals off, all missing players by 5 yards every time. It felt like whether it be by a kick or handball, just not finding them, and on the other side of it, Sydney were a lot better. It's funny looking at the stats post game, and even the pressure factor was mentioned. I've only gotten to watch the first half properly. I tried to watch it last night, fell asleep. It says a lot about the game. Meant my tiredness from work yesterday as well. So I watched the first half and then a bit of the third quarter this morning before I went to work. But that's all I've gotten as far as rewatch. Obviously, we were both there. They mentioned the pressure factor being 200 plus for both teams, so most of the first quarter. So the pressure factor was there for both, but. And then at one point, the kicking efficiency was better for Port. It was 44% to 25%, so it's not great for either. But it was just funny seeing that. But and maybe the first quarter was more or less in the second quarter. And as the Sydney's pressure,
it's probably because we were just chipping around our back 50 for what felt like the entire quarter. Yeah. Like Sydney hemmed us in quite well. They set up a wall. They flooded forward. And it was as if we just succumbed to it straight off the top.
Yeah.
That's definitely what it felt like. And like you said, the feeling, the juju was off from the get-go. They kept peppering inside 50s and peppering the score. And we're lucky to scrape through with 2 behinds. And realistically, those 2 behinds came off some pretty okay passages of play. We just didn't have any dare, particularly in that first quarter. But the first half, as a whole, it just left a lot to be desired for sure.
Yeah, it was both. I think the stat, when we look at those couple of stats, you go, well, Port weren't doing too bad, but as you said, the kind of it's where those kicks are happening. Like if you're doing 3 kicks to, whereas they're one, maybe their kicking efficiency is worse, but they're taking more shots down the field, which they were really trying to kind of break through us quickly, and they had the ball movements like. Errol Goulden was going at 80% in the first quarter in his first game back, which is pretty decent.
It's not what we wanted.
No, it's not. Not that he got off the chain for the game, but
we wanted short of a gallop.
Yeah.
Give me short of a gallop.
This isn't what I paid my money for. Yeah, -10 in ground ball and contested after the first quarter as well. So that's kind of two areas that we're really, you know, we'd be annoyed if we were -10 contested after the game. We ended up minus what 20 odd, which isn't
Yeah.
too terrible. Well, it is terrible.
Which is funnily
It's
enough,
more or
it's
less what we're
half.
used to at this point.
Well, comparatively to the game in Sydney earlier this year, where we lost contested possession by 40 and
Oh,
still managed
Jesus. Yeah.
to get away with the win. So it can be done. It
Mm,
just goes to show that there was way more off on our side of things than otherwise with Sydney. That is
mm,
just chalk and cheese sometimes. The effort, the intensity, the dare,
mm.
the tenacity at the contest. Yeah, as it turns out, we perhaps played a bit of a flu game, but unfortunately, like I mentioned on Donny's disposals, friend of the pod, Donny, last night, shout out to him. I said that unfortunately we didn't get mid 90s Michael Jordan flu game out of our boys on the weekend. We got flat as attack flu game.
Yeah.
It didn't bode well.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about it as you mentioned it, so I'm glad you brought it up. It's funny, and it's been a point of conjecture on Port Twitter, and I find it a mountain out of a molehill again. But just the Isaac Heaney comments about, like, was it Drew or Bergman that mentioned that he was crook?
Well, it's funny. It's funny you should say that because I saw your little clip, which was fantastic. Just was it from Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yes. Yeah.
Just succumbing, yeah, just walking through his fate. It would seem in the time, and I think you put Willem Drew in that little clip, and I thought it was alluding to Willem Drew, totally forgetting that in the first quarter, I made the comment to you like, "Oh, Bergman straight to Heaney." So in the back of my mind, I knew it was him, but in the moment when I heard that from Heaney, I was like, "Drew didn't say that, did he? He
Yeah.
could never, he could never do this to me."
I had
But
that
yeah, as
thought
it
when I
turns
was
out, I'm
making
pretty
that.
sure it was Bergman.
Yeah, when I was making that clip, I had that thought. I was like, I'm not 100% sure it's Drew, but Drew rhymes with flu, so I had to go with that for
That's
the
true.
artistic content because yeah, Miles Bergman more like mild. I could have gone Miles Flu Man, but yeah. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. That was just my gallows humor, both dealing with the world right now as well as Port Adelaide. So, yeah. What did you think? Like, whether it was Bergman or Drew? You find like I mean I'd rather they not say anything to Heaney, but there's that little piece of me that's
When did they say it though? On like when did they say it?
yeah, well, that's it. He
It
kind
it
of
it
says it.
it seemed like it was the start of the game, but
Yeah,
in the post-match, a lot of players condense four quarters into yeah, like a 5 minute
yeah, it could have
or
been a
a couple
comment
minute
halfway through the
answer
third
to
quarter. Like, yeah,
yeah, he's like, oh, I expected to get a bit of attention. And in his mind, and he tried, and then he was like, "Oh, I'm crook."
hmm
Where that was said, who knows? It's not ideal. Whenever, or could it have been in the handshake afterwards?
yeah,
I don't know. Who knows?
yeah.
Hopefully,
He's like
but
done a
it
spit
would
in the
it would
hand,
seem the
nod like, yeah, I've
otherwise.
been crook today, by the way.
So good luck next week.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't actually know, but yeah, a lot has been made about it. I'd
someone I
like
can't
to
remember who it
hear it
was.
from the horse's mouth first.
Exactly. And I think, well, I don't even think we need to hear about it, to be honest. My thought was like, I'd rather not, I do always have that little piece of me that sometimes when those things happen, it makes me think about them. There's that mateship to footy. So if it happened after the game, then it is what it is. If it happened during or at the start, I'm like, come on, let's get a little bit more Alan Border, late 80s Australian cricket, like get mean, at least at the start of the game. Got to get angry, got to get mean. It's the only way to play.
It's
That's
a bit
awesome.
cheeky of Heaney to drop that though in the post match. Does it go against the players' code a little bit? Because I would imagine, like Ken said in his post match, we had a few players underdone, but so does other teams,
hmm
other clubs, like across the season this time of the year, particularly. Yeah, like I think you alluded to just then, like players talk, whether it's at the start, during, or after the match. I wouldn't be surprised if
Sometimes at the Ramsgate.
shit like that is spoken about.
hmm
Sometimes at the Ramsgate, yeah, exactly when you need to let someone know that their club's been around for 2 minutes. But yeah, or a couple hours.
yeah.
But look, yeah, I I don't know if that's the worst of our issues. I
No.
know.
I mean, just
Miss
more.
Corns has made a big deal about it, but it
Yeah.
may just offer a bit of a snapshot if it was said when it is assumed it was said.
Mhm. More extrapolating out on the flu thing now, like one of the things that's been brought up as well is like, why did they play? And I get the impression that they had enough people struggling at various levels throughout the week that the option might have been, if you want people to be 100% flu free, then we forfeit. Is the kind of how I read the tea leaves of what it was. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
and it's funny because people go, oh, if they're crook, they shouldn't play. And yes, there's a certain point that, if you're contagious, got fucking influenza, sister's struggling with like influenza or something like that right now, like, yeah, she's holed up at home and trying to avoid people. And, but if they're kind of recovered to a point and they're at like 80%, and they're still dealing with the after effects. Like, when I had COVID, I felt like I had the after effects for 3 or 4 months at times. Like, people deal with after effects for a while, even though I can't hear. Jamie's just gone.
Sorry, yeah. The cough button stuck again.
Okay, I was just like,
But
was
I was
Jamie
just
trying to mess with me right now?
Yeah, see, I've planted that seed last year and now you'll never forget.
Anyway, go
No,
ahead,
but
though. Go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, what I was saying while my cough button was stuck was that I can't actually remember. Let's just move on.
He had the secret. He had the secret to human happiness and the cure. That's mentioning it right there. But he
Right
had the cough
there.
button on. Yeah.
Number
Oh well.
7.
I guess we'll go back to being pissed off at Port. Yeah, but my main point being like players are banged up for a variety of reasons in football, whether it be what sports. Like, man, every time the Stanley Cup finishes and it just has, like, you hear about, like, there was a player from Florida, I can't remember who was fucking dealing with it. Like, there's players that have had like basically broken legs, but they just kind of strap them together in their skates and play. Like, these things happen. Players being, having.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I was saying. Yeah,
Yes.
it comes to like when's the call made? Like,
Yeah.
do I just have to push through this because you were saying, the after effects of COVID or whatever it may be do last for longer than the height of the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just gotta, just go, well, this is my job. I have to do it. Like, I have to just get on with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It does add an interesting bit of context to the performance we saw, because if you'd told me, like, after seeing what we saw, I go, yeah, that's a team that they play like at the flu, because they were.
There's a lot of lethargy out on the field, it seemed.
Yeah, undercooked kicks and handballs,
There was crowding as well. One thing I noticed from the replays afterwards was so much crowding, a poor lack of spread, both offensively and defensively. Like, there was one piece of play that I noticed after the ball had exited the contest. There was, I think, maybe like 6 Port Adelaide players, all within 2 or 3 meters of one another, and yeah, it that kind of also provided a bit of a snapshot of just how poorly switched on, or lack of being switched on, we were throughout large portions of the game. And thankfully Sydney kept us in it for the entirety of the match, and we flirted with comebacks on a couple of occasions. A bit like that St Kilda match. It's like in another year we go on with that and we get over the line, or we take advantage of the team that is absolutely peppering the goals, but we'd flirt with it. And then inevitably, just poor accountability, poor ball movement, poor decision making just would inevitably lead to scores going the other way, which was so frustrating. I think I said to you on the night, we made an art form of picking out Sydney players like in between and outnumber in certain scenarios, which, again, I'm not sure if I've mentioned frustrating 20 times yet, but that was certainly frustrating.
Yeah. I even just
agonizing even.
It was. That first half was tough, and we watched it from the hill before we moseyed on up to your seats up there. And I stopped to potentially catch up with a friend who then messaged me and said, I'm not leaving my seats on the other side of the side. Then I ended up joining you up there. And I did kind of lean over at one point and said to you that, like, I feel like, and this was at halftime, not even knowing that the game was actually going to end the way it did. But I said that I felt like there was a moment for me that was kind of like in heat where Robert De Niro's character is just like, and statute of
Because we were joking about going home, I
yeah.
think. Yeah.
The statute of limitations on Heat, it's 30 years old. Like if you haven't seen it, then you can skip ahead 30 seconds and the spoiler, there will
It's a
be a
modern
spoiler.
classic.
Yeah, he his rule is like, he's a thief, and his rule is 30 seconds flat. If I feel the heat, I'm gone. Like, and the end of the movie ends with him getting killed because he let, whether it be relationships or personal vendettas against someone who had wronged him, getting away, and he ends up getting caught by the cop and killed. I felt like that at halftime. I felt like I had my moment where I was like driving to the airport like De Niro in Heat, just like I could just walk out these doors and head home and have a nice night, but I stayed and ultimately got shot by Al Pacino as the lights of LAX washed over my body. So that's how it's just, and I felt that at halftime. I was like, I think this isn't going to get any better. Like you could just, as we said, we felt that
Yeah.
through the first half, and there was that little period in the third quarter where I think, when Rosie takes that shot for goal, he misses, that would have got us within 9 points.
That is, yeah.
So we did.
Yeah, that was the other flirt with a comeback. And we did have a bit of steam.
Close, possibly, but you take your opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Sometimes when you're presented with opportunities, even though you may not deserve them, you have to take them. That Hawthorn game at home last year was a prime example.
Yes,
We
yeah, absolutely.
and Ken post-match, yeah, probably didn't deserve to win, but sometimes you just do because one team doesn't take their chances or takes their foot off, and you just come kind of on the ropes or on the canvas, and you find a way to pick yourself back up, and keep pushing on. But
Indiana Pacers almost won a fucking championship doing that the entire fucking playoffs, and they arguably might have if the
what the hell-y? What the hell-y?
Andrea's gonna love that. She says that all the time at the moment. Obviously not referencing Halliburton, but just that. Yeah. I mean, we can start with our defense and their forward line. Obviously, are going through the lines because that's probably an interesting part of the game to discuss, and I feel like we've been teasing it for a bit. So, I mean, before we just talk about some of our defensive efforts, this is probably what the most frustrating thing is that we gave ourselves an opportunity, almost getting within 10 points in that third quarter, having watched an opposition forward have one of the worst games, a good game in the sense of what he does to give himself the opportunities, but he ultimately ends up, minus 10.5 on champion data player rating.
Yeah. It doesn't make for kind viewing on Joel Amartey's behalf.
That was funny to be a part of. It just
it was. It lightened the mood, that's for sure. Particularly as he's kicked his fifth and sixth behinds.
Yeah,
to just go the six pack.
I think I even said to you at one point, there's one of the relatively easy opportunities I got. I just was like, yeah, he's finally going to pick one, and then he shanks it. I was like, oh, surely. Fuck me, right? Like,
yeah, fuck me, yeah.
That's what's most frustrating about this, though, is we, defensively, I think there's some good performances down there. Whether it be the likes of, I think Josh Sin has a great start to the game.
He did, yeah.
Sava,
he was on spotlight shortlist for me. Don't really have any either way, to be honest. We commented a few times on Sin's performance in that first half.
Mm-hmm. I thought he was really good. He was one that didn't look like he was under influence from flu. So I don't know what his situation was throughout the week as it ravaged the group. But he looked sharp.
Quarantine.
Yeah, he looked sharp as far as his hunt for the ball and his positioning, and some of those things that we've criticised him for were less where he was doing well, and then he was obviously his defensive work has improved. Commentators mentioned it in the commentary as well at times during the game. It was just like he steadily improved across the year.
And his disposal is generally always good.
Yes.
He generally always makes good decisions with ball in hand too. Frustratingly enough, got mismatched.
Yeah,
on a few of those Amartey occasions, for example.
We were
so there's a breakdown somewhere.
Out.
Yeah, we were livid because he was playing a good game. Yeah, he was playing a good game, pound for pound. But then, just a mismatch. Whether Sydney was smart enough and strategic enough to manufacture that in some way, or a poor breakdown of our structure defensively. I think it's a healthy dose of both, to be honest. Which is pretty disappointing. And again, defense being kind of sold out a little bit ahead, but also they lacked a bit of dare coming out of the 50 at times too, particularly like the likes of Kane Farrell, which was surprising, a
Yeah.
bit timid. And Sydney's forward press was immense. It's, one of the more congested forward presses that I've seen recently.
Hmm.
And we just did nothing, like again, without a Charlie Dixon to just hat kick on a wing or on that intersection of the center square and the wing. Um, yeah, and that's where you want like a Jordan Sweet to come up and just present something when we're lacking tall timber up the field out of
Mm.
defense. But yeah, we just trying to exit 50 a lot of the time. We just went into our shell and left a little bit to be desired in that regard. So inevitably, it's pressure kicks or it's coming back just as quickly as it exited, and we're scrambling for position.
Yeah. It would have been. It's been a point of contention in the post-match aftermath with both fans and I'm sure some commentary out there as well. I haven't caught up on too many of the footy shows in the wake of it because of busyness with work. But how do you? We'll talk about the midfield when we get to it, but just as far as its permutations to our defensive line, Connor Rosie spending more time in midfield probably. I think I read one commentator refer to it as robbing Peter and not paying Paul, because it kind of just what he's given to our defense, we took that away a bit,
Mm.
and I think he was played okay, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I thought he had a great game
Yeah, but
based on the position that he was playing.
exactly, yes, but like we didn't really get any. We didn't have anything to cover for what he has provided to our defense over the last 10 weeks since he's gone in there or whatever it's been. How did you find
Yeah.
that as a decision? I mean, we'll talk about the midfield in a moment, but just as far as I guess it's hard to talk about it without the midfield. But there was I don't know. I love him back there, and I think he still does. I mean, his pressure act numbers were good again this week, being back in the middle. So it's really
They
funny.
sure were, Dave. They sure
Sure they'll
were.
come up later.
Long-time
But
listeners will know our love for Connor Rosie's pressure act numbers when he's in the midfield.
yeah,
So yes, they
um,
were back up.
I mean, it's probably unfortunate that the others, like probably Kane Farrell's lack of ability to do as much as we would have liked to, makes the Connor Rosie go into the middle. Like, there's part of it's like we're missing Rosie back there, and then it's like others aren't picking up the slack. I want to mention
Mm.
Ryan Burton. I don't think he had a great game, but I don't think he had as bad a game as some would suggest, based on he's one that just at the moment has the scapegoat on him. And for good reason, he does butcher the ball at weird times, bites off more than he can chew. He is lackadaisical at times as well when he shouldn't be. But he
Just seemingly comes out of nowhere.
it does, yeah. It's just like
Just
I
like
think he's.
why? For
I don't know if
such
it's a
a such
confidence
a
thing, like he's overconfident in
yeah,
moments. I don't know what it is.
for such a thoroughbred footballer,
Yeah,
yeah, it's just some lapses in concentration or a poor decision, like you said, about maybe a bit too comfortable, and a
yeah,
lackadaisical decision results in a clanger,
mm,
of which I think he was equal third or fourth, with a group of players, it must be said, including Miles Bergman.
mhm. Yeah. He wasn't
Yeah,
an outlier as far as that, but he led our meters gained by a significant number. He had 5 intercepts, which is the second most on the team as well. He had 5 score involvements. Like he did a lot of what you want out of Ryan Burton in the side. It's just
mm,
like there is those little turnover moments or the clangers. Like, but he only had he had 3 turnovers, which is like far for the amount of ball he had is not all that bad. Like that's less than his compatriots in that top 5 in disposals. It's the least of them. Butters, Rosie, Farrell had 4 each. Powell-Pepper had 5. He's got 3. So it's just like his moments are just highlighted by the fact it's just how they aesthetically look. They just look worse because he already has that little bit of, we wouldn't question the efforts of Butters, Rosie, Powell-Pepper and co. I don't think we should question Burton's efforts as much. I just think he frustratingly
no.
switches off at moments. That's all it is.
Mm.
And I think he's a footballer that cares. And that's why I'll push back on some of the more scathing online criticism. But I understand, again, as I always say with these ones, I understand why people are like, never put him in a Port Adelaide jumper again, based on what they're emotionally responding to. I just disagree with that as your outcome. Like, he is a good footballer. We just need to, and whether he's going to get any better, I don't know. I think he has the ability to, if he locks in a few of those things. It's just whether he actually mentally or coaching or whatever it is going to what it's going to take to get him there. I don't know if we get him there at this point, but I think he's a very, very handy footballer. It's just like he's just got this
He's pretty like we've
couple of
mentioned a
percent.
couple of times now. He's putting up good numbers. It's just the turnovers or the clangers that stand out for the type of player that he is.
Hmm.
Like you mentioned, leading our meters gained by a fair margin, getting disposals in the 20s, contributing elsewhere around the field, pressure acts and whatnot. I haven't actually looked at that to be honest, though. But it's like you've mentioned though, live at the games, you're like, what's going on there? And then you watch the replay and you reflect on it, and or you pay attention maybe to some things off the ball or positioning, and you're like, oh, okay. So it's not that bad. I think, like I said it last week, we demand perfection from Ryan Burton, and
Mm.
the imperfect moments of his, very similarly to Asava last year, particularly, they just stand out and they overshadow some good work that he's doing. So,
Lockie
which is
Jones earlier
unfortunate for
this year
him.
as well. Like Lockie Jones had that
Yeah, yeah,
that classic couple of minutes against Collingwood and stuff like that. They had people saying
yeah,
similar things, and but then
yeah.
he held Jeremy Cameron completely scoreless up until he pinged his hamstring, and everyone was like, "Oh wait, this football is pretty good." So there's
Mm.
yeah,
Well,
and
and unfortunately, he looked short of a gallop
yeah,
as opposed to our opponents. So not much to report there. I thought Asava had like a pretty good game.
hmm
The statistics, he's in a pretty good vein of form. Although there was some occasions where when he was matched up on a Joel Amartey, for example, they still were able to find that leading lane and break away from him, which was
hmm
unfortunate. Is that all on him? Is that the breakdown up the field? Again, like a similar comment before, it's probably out of both baskets. So, but when 11 intercept possessions, which by far led our team, and he's
hmm
still getting those intercept marks, contested marks, it's probably like a pretty par game for him,
yeah,
to be honest.
particularly
Disposal efficiency is still pretty good.
yeah, his first game probably I would say he became the leader of the defense on Saturday as well. Obviously, with Rosie out of there as well, Aaliyah obviously not playing, which is a big factor, I think, in the a little bit of structural discontent maybe. So I think he was
I
the
think it plays into the robbing Peter and not paying Paul. Like we've
yeah,
already lost Aaliyah, who would be firming up structure
yep,
and directing traffic a little bit. And then Rosie, yeah, like you mentioned before, him also going out a leadership presence, direction off the ball and whatnot
hmm
to other players. So, um, like I always mentioned, one player, two players, that they don't make the difference. It's a collective effort, but some of those things just don't quite make a lot of sense. Like the Rosie thing doesn't make a lot of sense when you've already lost another leader in
hmm
that portion of the field.
yeah.
So missed Aaliyah for sure.
Yeah, no, we did, and yeah, I'm glad he's firming to be possibly available this week, which we'll touch on later on as we close out with the looking forward. But yeah, I mean, we might as well talk about the midfield because there is a lot of that goes with talking about who was moved in and out. Uh, I mean, we touched on the flu stuff and whatever. I don't know how much of an impact that has. I think we had a couple of decent, very nice performances. I mean, Butters was our only coach's vote feature, which I did scroll across thinking, are we going to get any? It'll be
Mm,
interesting to see who that came from. As you generally go well, probably
home,
10.
yeah, the home coach.
Yeah. But it'd be funny if it was like Ken was just like, nah, Sydney fucking dominated us, and like Cox was just like, I love Butters, like I gave him a vote. I don't think that
Yeah,
would have occurred,
he's
but
one of my favorite players. Built
yeah,
up on Pelly earlier this year.
exactly.
Like, keep him mitts off.
I think we're safe with Sydney. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
knock on the wood. That Butters was great. Rosie as a midfielder was good. It's just it,
It's not necessarily what we needed, though, was it?
exactly, yeah, and
I
like Butters
mean,
was.
sorry, I
No,
think
you
we
go ahead. I'm getting the
underestimated,
stats up.
yeah, I think we underestimated the loss of Ollie Wines. And
Hmm.
again, one player doesn't make or break your side, but there's roles to play And at the game, once it started, once that picture was starting to get painted, well, I think we said to each other a few times, like just missing Ollie Wine's grunt work deep in the guts. And I would agree that I don't disagree with Rosie continuing in that midfield rotation, probably even a little bit more so than in recent months, I suppose. And I was happy to see that SPP got a bit more like midfield time because if you're losing an Ollie Wines
21% for
and S,
SPP, which I
how many percent was it?
21%. I would have liked it to have been closer to. I would have liked. I think just to
Yeah.
touch on that point as you continue it, but I would have liked that to be up to 40 to 50 with the missing Ollie Wines, as opposed to
That's right, because it's more of a like for like replacement.
Mhm.
SPP is more than capable. He's recreated himself as a pressure forward, but we can't forget what we were hoping that he would become in the guts of our midfield at one point in time. And it does seem like more of a like for like replacement, having him put the Ollie Wines numbers in the midfield, because at the end of the day, you need to get it forward. There is no point him staying forward if we are just absolutely inept in getting it in that portion of the field. So having him spend more time mid, Rosie less to shore up our defense in the absence of Aaliyah, like we mentioned, just makes a bit more sense to me. I think Willem Drew also spent a little bit more time in the guts too and had a pretty good game.
42% for Will.
But yeah, so was it lost at selection? I don't think so. But was it potentially lost in some of these magnet
I think it was game planning more so.
decisions?
Yeah,
Game planning? Yeah.
selection was as good as it
That
could
seemed to be
be.
off.
I mean, people are going to crow about Jackson Mead every week at the moment, but I don't think he was terrible. He certainly didn't let
Well,
himself.
when we spoke about it off the back end of the Melbourne game, you're not dropping him based on the numbers that he returned in the Melbourne game. So did he lift to the opportunity presented to him this week? No,
Mhm.
not in my opinion. I think it was fairly clear that they wanted to give him that opportunity, but unfortunately for Jackson, it was either too touching, fumbling,
Mhm.
or just some poor decision making. I mean, the 12 disposals that he did attain went at 58.3%, so it's not ideal at all. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, just a stark dose of reality for him. He's not quite there yet. And that is not to say that the end is nigh for Jackson Mead, but he's just not there. He's just not ready
yeah,
clearly to take that step to fill an Ollie Wines' shoes,
Mhm.
which is unfortunate. Do I necessarily expect him to at this point in time? Probably not. But a lot more fans have a lot less patience than I do,
yeah.
seemingly. So it's worth noting.
Mhm. Um, I the numbers for as far as like this is what's crazy is Connor Rosie was the top midfield centre bounce attendance for anyone on the field, including Swans at 89%.
Mm,
So I think that's where my issue is the pendulum swung too much, and you've got two guys like Butters. Butters is a little more contested, but we just needed someone to be at a like up there beyond 50%. I think that could do the grunt work that you're talking about, whether that be Drew, who did spend more time there. Jason Horne-Francis, I think, was hampered somewhat in there protecting that shoulder a little bit. I think he played okay. He had 21%
mm,
as well, but I think but that's where again you can go back to SPP. SPP's number, like he spent more time in the around the guts than he has all year. But again, like with this game in particular was the one that you actually need him to do more. If it's not going to be Horne-Francis because you're looking at that, like trying to protect that shoulder a little bit, and you've got a metrics based on what you think kind of contact you can take. I don't know how they work that out. It's a very bang bang game. So, but yeah, whether it's Drew, he had decent time in the middle, but if he were, depending on who was crook, Bergman got hurt, banged up early, so I think that affected some of the
mm.
planning too. I would imagine. He plays. I think he plays out the game okay, but like I think that some of the plans with Bergman and whether he was crook and then he got hurt and it was just like, oh God, like
He looked sore.
yeah, he
It was a bit of a surprise that he didn't get subbed off at one point, just
I
judging by his body language.
agreed, yeah, because he looked, especially watching the replays, throwing his head back and kind of grimacing and expressing
Because that
pain.
shoulder's a bit dicky for him. Like, from what I believe, he gets about 10 to 15 scans on his shoulder like every year,
Jesus.
for the last few years. Because I remember he had an SEN SA spot talking to Kimbo and the Roots, the Drive Home show, on SEN SA, and at one point, because they were asking him about, players getting scans, because I can't remember who it was, a Port Adelaide player,
Mm,
had the microscope on there, like, will he play, won't he, kind of thing. I can't remember who it was, but Miles Bergman was like, yeah, we get precautionary scans all the time, and most of them
don't
you
even,
don't even hear about,
yeah.
and because they're only precautionary. And he's like, yeah, I've had about 12 this year, 12 scans. So yeah, that shoulder of his is a bit dicky.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, yeah, flu game, copped a knock. It clearly hampered him
Yeah.
across the entirety of the match.
Yeah, and I do wonder while we look at these numbers if that hampered some of the magnets we were maybe planning to move around a little bit in the game. Like, Heaney got off the chain. Obviously, Heaney was that was more of a classic Heaney game, unfortunately.
Mm,
Rowbottom, I
hmm
really love Rowbottom. He was great. They just had all of their. They didn't have. I mean, and I guess we should talk about it as well. The ruck battle again. I'm reasonably okay with what Vicentini did. Beyond
So
getting beaten,
strange.
I'm really, really disappointed in the fact that Jordan Sweet just didn't have an impact much at all. He only,
Mm.
Sweet was, it was 84-16 was a split between Vicentini and Sweet at the centre bounce. So they basically more or less gave the job on Grundy to to Dante Vicentini. So and that didn't.
It's
So
interesting. It's
for
very,
me,
very interesting.
For me, if you're going to do that, I would have just started Jeremy Finlayson. Like, if you're not using Sweet enough, I mean, the hit out, I guess the hit outs, they like Jordan Sweet did a bit more work around the ground, but then I just would have
Yeah, the stats still, yeah,
I
it's a
would have
bit
just given
similar to
that.
last week. It's like, three hit outs to advantage, from a similar amount of hit outs,
Mhm.
same amount of disposals, although Jordan Sweet went at 40%, but he got 125 meters gain to Viz's six, two marks to Viz's one. Uh, like score involvements, Vicentini got the chocolates there. He got clearances, but spending more time in the middle, you would
Mhm.
probably assume that. Pressure acts, Viz takes chocolates there. 1% is Jordan Sweet. So there's bits and pieces where it's such a predicament. It's
Mhm.
so interesting. They're clearly putting a lot of time into Vicentini. There's obviously some things that he's doing that Jordan Sweet isn't, but I mean they end up same amount of fantasy points, and Jordan Sweet is actually a higher champion data rated player at the
Well,
end
that's
of it.
interesting because
But the
I
eye test would suggest that he didn't really present a whole lot, Jordan
yeah.
Sweet, that is.
Mhm.
And Viz is getting a lot of effort points, in my opinion, because
Mhm.
you're comparing experience versus output at the moment. But yeah, they just seem to like Dante
Yeah,
that fraction more at the moment.
and well, like that's again just the midfield time and in the middle. Finlayson, I would have just given the crack at going around the ground a little bit more. Whether and then you might end up with the same issues as far as like that we were talking about with Burton, as far as the Finlayson aesthetics go, as far as his game goes. But I just think he might have provided more around the ground than like Sweet's my watch for the week because I think he's gotten an opportunity over the last couple of weeks and he just hasn't. And whether it is funking with his vibe that he has to battle with
Mm,
Santini for that midfield time and
mm.
he's not getting the
And be
repetitions.
that tool option forward,
Yeah,
taking pressure off George.
yeah. But it's a real concern to me at the moment, just how we're rotating as you said, the time's being put into Vicentini and Sweet, who, we ended last year and went into this year thinking was, we've sorted having a decent number one ruckman, even though we knew Vicentini's in the
Mm.
background and we think he's going to be a good prospect going forward as well. But just the fact that we're, a bit over halfway through the year and we've really leaned into Vicentini and Jordan Sweet seems somewhat
Yeah.
out in the weeds a little bit again. It's just a really,
And Yeah,
in certain
absolutely. And some
places.
of these opposition ruckmen are just getting a clear advantage at the
Mm,
moment. Like opposition teams are getting a clear advantage from their ruckman, which like a ruckman, although we're talking about a Brody Grundy and like Max Gordon last week,
yeah.
for example, like, you know, legends of their era,
Mm,
the ruck position shouldn't provide that much dominance still, in my opinion. But
mm,
oppositions coming up, whether it's against a lone Byzantini, a lone Sweet, or the combination, are just getting to like Brody Grundy had 12 hitouts to advantage, which is
yeah.
double what we got combined out of Viz and Jordan Sweet. Um, Doubled their possessions combined as well with 22. So that's what I mean. And Soldo is basically in a wheelchair.
Mm.
Like, and I know what you're saying.
He's not even
While Jordan
factored
Sweet's
into
numbers are fairly similar. No,
anything going
yeah.
forward for me. Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. He's yeah. We'd
He's
be in
done.
pretty dire straits if Soldo's getting named in an AFL team right
Yeah.
now. But I know what you mean though. Like while the stats are fairly similar, and you're like, this guy gets the chocolates in that stat line. This guy, you want Sweet to come in and dominate that position comparatively to a Visentini, although Visentini is getting more opportunity, particularly in the center. Um, and Sweet's not. It's very, he's matching a guy with 11 or 12 games of experience.
Mm.
And like you said, coming out of the back end of last year, you're like, fuck, Sweet's improved out of sight and taking it up to some of these more established ruckmen. But for whatever reason, he's in a funk, and a 12 gamer is matching him for output,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. It's a really weird. I thought we'd kind of at least gotten. I didn't think Sweet was going to be Max Gorn or something going into this year, but I was just at least
Mm,
like, I think we've gotten to a point of comfortability with our ruck, and now it's again we're just
mm.
like playing two rucks to try to
Oh,
beat one opposition ruckman again. It's just like, for
mm.
fuck's sake.
And part of that is the forward woes.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure if a Lukosius or a Todd Marshall with 6 or 7 extra kilos
Mm,
of muscle
true.
on his frame are in the forward line, we're picking one and not the other, and they can and hammer down on that one position. And
Yeah, but then which one of them?
but yeah,
Yeah, like that's the other
yeah,
the other
yeah,
that's
exactly,
yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was a disappointing midfield game again. Again, we got beaten. I mean, we can just talk about a couple of these stats now. Like, the clearance numbers weren't a massive win, but it was just the quality of clearance, I think, for me. Um, and they just had the hunt around the ball. Like, we had opportunities for clearances, and we just kind of like they just got the numbers around and had more intent through the stoppage when it came to came to the ground. And I mean, the turnover and clanger numbers are just woefully horrible. And we talked about that in the pre-show. Like, we need to, even if we kind of get shaded in turnovers and clangers, it just can't be too bad. And whereas in this game, it was like we were minus 14 on turnovers, and clangers was
Hmm.
fucking almost minus 15, I think. So yeah, both,
Hmm.
just in, pure, the clanger sense, but then turnovers as well, just both way too lopsided one way. And then, yeah, the clearance numbers, they shade us both at the stoppage and the center. And I think it was just the quality of ball use once they got the clearance as well. Yeah, we
Well,
had some
that's right.
moments.
Like
We had some
we
Butters
got
and Rogan had
shaded.
some moments when they cleared, like got
Yeah,
run and carry, and Butters had some great kind of shake and bake runs out of the middle, but it was like
yeah, yeah. Putting the jets on as
we
well.
had to rely on that, and it's just yeah,
Well, and I mean, yeah. So that poor contest clearance challenge that we didn't pose resulted in a -16 differential on inside 50s. And like some more frustrating stats are that like disposal efficiency was fairly even at around 70 percent. Our efficiency inside 50 was 51.4%, which is a
mm,
rise on our average. But the problem was we were giving them much easier access. They were plus 13% on their average at 60.8%
yeah,
efficiency inside 50. And both of our season averages are pretty much identical.
mm,
Um, we had more marks inside 50 as well. Like
That
our set shot goal
that blew my
kicking was
fucking
actually
mind.
better than theirs, but it's just, sorry, what was that?
That blew my fucking mind when I saw that stat, the marks inside 51. That, yeah, I was
Yeah, so it
shocked.
goes to show that if once we did turn it on and actually screw our heads on properly as a collective, yeah, we shaded them in marks inside 50. And our set shot goal kicking was obviously better. I think it was late in the game. We'd kicked 3 goals 4 from set shots, which isn't fantastic in its own right. And so they're
Mm,
1 goal 8. So we generated fairly similar set shots at goal, but just the general play scoring options that they were afforded based on our poor contest, clearance, disposal, execution, or decision making really takes the wind out of your sails
yeah,
because yeah, like a bit of if I told you, but like they got the edge in some of these key statistics, but I
mm,
think a lot flatters us as X score would suggest, and as Ken mentioned in his post-match presser.
yeah. I will say one thing, and I'd taken a screenshot of the stat to put in my notes, and I hadn't actually had a good look at it now. But it is interesting to see as far as the score origin goes. Like we actually didn't give up. Like as far as the clearance numbers were shaded by them, but we didn't. We actually outscored them by 7 points from the centre bounce. So we were able to deal with what the problem for us was turnover. It was 4 goals 10 to 2 goals 3 from turnover. So it actually, we're lucky it was only minus. That's essentially the winning
So
margin.
lucky.
It's 19-point margin in turnover, and that's what the margin was. But as we've said about X scorers, X score basically says we should have lost this game by 45. We lost it by 19. So that's all from turnover. Both the fact that we lost by less, but the fact that we did lose was turnover. The forward half was 4-9 to 1-3 as well. So like most of that turnover, happened in the forward half. And they just, and to your point about the defensive stuff, like they locked us in and were able to generate our turnovers from that forward half pressure, and then that was where their score source. Again, they were profligate in front of goal. They didn't punish us enough, and we were in the game right up until midway through the last quarter when they did kick away, and we kicked the last 2 goals of the game to get it back to 19 points. It could have been a little bit. The score should have been a little bit more reflective of
It was actually 3 goals.
3 goals, was it? Yeah,
When you include Joe Richards after the song had started goal at
yeah,
the ground, which everyone was dumbfounded by in the moment.
yeah.
Yeah, because
We
we had
cheered that one
DBJ,
quite hard.
SPP, and then Richards. Well, sorry, what was that?
The Bronx cheer that we gave when the goal went through, and I was genuine. I was like, yes,
Everyone cheered as
yeah,
if we'd like almost won the game, or we'd got ourselves ahead. But yeah, it was just a goal after the siren to make the score even more flattering towards
Mm,
our effort on the day.
yeah.
So it's one of the stranger moments with the song starting, getting cut
Mm.
off, a goal being kicked, and then the song just starting from where it left off as well.
Yeah,
Um,
kind of sums up the bizarre day that it was. I mean,
yeah,
if you've got anything
absolutely.
else on the midfield, but we can move to the forward line. Not that there's much to say, to be honest, because we gave ourselves 35 fucking inside 50s.
Mm,
Georgiades misses an
poor.
easy one at one point. He kicks one like we don't, but we don't. He unfortunately probably doesn't get nearly as much opportunity as we'd hoped going into the game. Um, I mean, yeah. Like, what do you think about it? Like, there's not much judgment I can put on the forward line. Yes, I still wish beyond Georgiades missing shots he should kick, which is just a storyline of the year, but he's still fifth in the Coleman. Like, so swings and roundabouts that it is with Mitch
Well,
Georgiades.
he got his 4 shots. He got the 4 shots that we always expect. It's what we always ask for. But for fuck's sake, again, it was 1 goal 3 for
Yeah,
Georgiades. Come
for some reason
on.
I had one goal
One
two
of
three,
those
but
was
it is
tight in the pocket, but
yeah. There was
it's like, oh,
we'd
he
missed.
would probably kick that.
Yeah, we did say that, didn't we? Yeah. Yeah, it
Did
was
one
a.
go out in the full as well? Was that his first shot on goal?
Did
I
I?
don't think
I
he
honestly
scored in
don't
the
recall.
first quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh yeah, he could.
um well, I mean, yeah, so with SPP kind of spending midfield time, it makes his numbers look a bit better as a forward.
Yeah.
JHF chipped in, but he was obviously hampered, which
Mhm.
again, brings question marks for mine, but also like you mentioned with the flu game, it's like, well, how many players do we want to have out when, 70%, 75% fit JHF is still probably better than some of the other options to
Yeah.
come in. Rioli looked dynamic, or he looked dangerous. Sorry, that's the D, the five Ds of my mind right now. He looked dangerous when we
Mm.
could get the ball in his vicinity.
Yeah. Just didn't do
35
that.
entries would
Mm.
suggest that that didn't happen anywhere near as often. Some really delicate possessions from Rioli, and but well, Joe Richards obviously needs a mention.
Mm.
I think we were commenting throughout the group of us on the day just about how hard he works
Yeah,
off the ball,
he's my
which
spotlight
generate
actually. I just
yeah, and
yeah,
rightly so.
I think he's one of the few
He
that
does that much
didn't
gut running. It's not funny.
yeah. He's one of the few that didn't look hampered at all by any whether it be flus or
Illness.
whatever that's going on. I mean, he was almost at 70% considering some of the he does
Yeah, we're putting our detective hats on now. It's like who was affected,
yeah,
who
exactly.
or who wasn't affected by flu. Yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't look affected at all.
I
No.
mean, he had the six score involvements. He was, 19 disposals at 68%.
Mm.
Like,
I like his goal kicking run up.
yeah,
It's
yeah, you
very
were
Jay
talking.
Schultz, although a bit longer.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
I like it because it turns a set shot into basically a field kick because he
Yeah,
runs in at goal.
yeah.
And there's no surprise why he kicks straight. I mean, the one that hit the post, it hit the post. Like,
Mhm.
what did he do? Should
We
have
were,
been nine
we were. I
points.
was thinking it was coming in, and then it hits the post. But then, yeah, he kicks the other one, obviously after the siren. But like when you're kicking 1-1, but one of them's hit the post, and that shot was from what 45 odd. Like I'm trying to picture. He starts the run up back
Hmm.
basically at the interchange bench.
I think they were both in fairly similar positions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
opposite sides of the field. Yeah, basically the swinging the field the opposite way, same angle,
yeah,
same foot, but just
yeah. I think so.
opposite. And he finishes one and hits the post on the other. So it shows, and he's that goal against Hawthorn earlier in the year that sets the tone in that game. The one against GWS a few weeks ago, like he's clearly got like a set shot, straight drop punt routine that just he's comfortable with. That's gonna and he's not gonna fuck with it too much because he's pretty confident from
Yeah,
any spot that he's got a reasonably straight kick. So,
he
I,
needs to
I,
spend some time with Georgiades.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Georgiades is it's all between the ears, isn't it? But yeah, those,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, that's the frustrating thing about the forward line is there's not too much. Like, I mean, SPP gets a goal, but it comes
Oh,
from from centre bounce work and his involvement there more so. So
yeah. I still I think was he in the centre bounce though, or did he come up from a half forward
he might have come up from half
to
forward
the
because
to the stoppage?
it comes out the back and then curves
Yeah.
forward, and
I
he gets
mean,
a
a
handball of
great
speed.
passage of play.
Yeah, so whether he's come in from after the bounce is taken, and then when he gets the ball, he's kind of like he receives it more or less just past the center circle, but whether he's come up from half forward, I couldn't honestly tell you. I can't. I'm trying to think of how the setup was around the center bounce before.
Mm.
I think he did come up.
Another, sh
I'm thinking he did come up from
yeah,
half
I
forward because
think he
Rosie and
did.
Butters were both involved in it. I'm pretty sure as far as the play that
And
gets,
you dare say like a Liddy or a Drew were
yeah, yeah,
probably the third,
yeah.
but
I know that's cutting back to the midfield, but shout out to Liddy. I thought he's a second gamer. He was playing fucking Sandful 4 weeks ago. So
mm,
like,
I think he took another
yeah,
step forward, step up, however you want to phrase it. He's kind of being thrown in the deep end a little bit,
hmm
in my opinion. But like we've mentioned, he's 23. He's more of that mature age type recruit. You're picking those types of players to kind of have some sort of an influence based on
yeah,
their football knowledge, their experience in the game and at SANFL level, like you mentioned. But yeah, so fairly impressed with the second gamer ultimately,
yeah.
but he's not
Took
going to turn the
five
dial too
marks. A couple
much.
of them quite nice too. I thought so.
Yeah, 50
Um,
meters was one of those ones where you're just like, why is this even a fucking rule? He was the only player in the vicinity to man the mark, but yeah, sure, the rule says like if you come from behind It's a 50 minute. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. They gave up a goal. I
Man in
don't
the
really
Mark
blame
one,
him
the stand and man in
because
the
it probably gets away with it in the SANFL because they're not so fucking stupid.
yeah.
Although SANFL umpires, fuck me dead for the two AFL clubs playing in that competition to get the raw end of the deal more often than not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a dumb rule, which unfortunately led to a 50-meter penalty and a
Mm.
goal on him. That's not really on him. One other shout out I wanted to make, just going back to the forward line, was
Mm.
DBJ. Another comment that we made on the night was just his use by foot and it came off the back of that Channel 7 statistical board where they named every player's retention, every club's best retention player
Mm.
going inside 50, and DBJ was ours, and he did nothing to go against that
Yeah.
on the weekend's game. He had the one goal assist to DBJ, and there was another couple of disposals inside 50 that he pulled off, and
Yeah.
and we being hyper aware of it, we're going there it is,
There's
another
another one.
kick retained by DBJ. Yeah, we see again, like some of these fucking pieces like played good games in their own right. It's just such a small snapshot because we
Mm.
just couldn't get it in their vicinity. That lack of dare from back further
Yeah.
just really restricted us, and I don't understand why. He kicked his own goal as well. He also had the six score involvements, which is, a healthy group of players around him, such as SPP, JHF, Zach Butters with the six score involvements. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, deserves a shout out because, yeah, we're, like I said, hyper aware of that statistic now. So we're kind of looking out for kicks retained off of his boot,
Mhm.
which is on display.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a frustrating one for the forward line. Again, it's Vicentini almost uh, presented really well for that one mark he took, and unfortunately didn't finish
He
the
did.
goal. The I think commentary team, I think Derm put the mockers on him, and Dwayne gave him some shit in the commentary. So because I think right as he's taking a shot, Derm's going, oh, I don't reckon this is going to be tough. And the ruckman don't kick these,
Uh,
and then like as it goes through, he shaves through for the point. Like Derm's going, no, I was right. Like kind of just keeps going with the sentence. It was
yeah,
yeah.
just snap it. Little check side
Yeah,
he
I
went the
can't
drop
remember if
punt,
he
didn't
missed
he?
it badly, but yeah, it's just one of those ones that you would
I
have.
don't think so.
Yeah,
He
he
just
could have.
missed.
Yeah, great mark though, but yeah, again, just kind of shows that we don't have the with Georgiades. Georgiades still got his time, but it's just like with the lack of the starvation that our forwards had, you kind of highlighted some of the missing pieces we have down there because whether it changes things when you've got a bulky Marshall or a Lukosius up there, I don't know. Did you have anything else on any of the lines, or ready to move on?
No, that just about covers it for
Yeah,
mine. Yeah.
it was a rough one. Actually, before we get to the segments, though, I talked about this with you briefly in text this morning.
Yes.
I have to
Yes.
get to some Dwayne. Dwayne had if Champion Data rated like
Commentary game.
commentary quarters because the
All
second
right.
quarter I'm keyed in on because that's the one that most of it came from. It was incredible. So if you I know you've haven't had much time for replays. Have you actually
I haven't
seen?
watched it that
You don't know
forensically,
any.
no, I must
Yeah,
admit. So
uh,
I'm excited
it's
for what.
yeah. So well, speaking of Vicentini, it starts from when he takes his mark, and they've talked about the ruckman stuff, and Dwayne makes a Dante's Peak reference to the
Of
1997
course.
classic with Pierce Brosnan and Linda Hamilton, Dante's Peak, a volcano movie. Interestingly released within 2 weeks as Volcano with Tommy Lee Jones was released. A really random thing that's the two '90s volcano movies released within 2 weeks. But yeah, Dwayne pulled that one out because Dante's Peak I think is the lesser known one slightly because Volcano is like the more blockbuster one.
Yeah,
Dante's
yeah.
Peak's
I
not.
think it Dante's Peak first because I think it always used to be on Channel 10
Yeah, I used to watch it.
multiple times a year.
It's a sick day movie for me. When I was sick from school,
Yeah,
I
right.
wasn't really sick. I just didn't want to go to school.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd watch Dante's Peak. So,
Get it in there.
so yeah, Dante's Peak came up, which I was just like, great. That's just quintessential Dwayne just being able to pull that one out of the ass. What a lighter one, but just like the way he enunciated it. There was one after, I think it was Grundy Grundy got sweet holding the ball, and like Dwayne just in his great, like just his, dulcet tone just go like just announce, like just expressed, man's got to know his limitations, like just about Jordan's sweet, just like just
with gusto.
it's just like that's incredible. But he kicked into just incredible form late in the quarter, and the one that got me, I texted you this morning and said I had to put my replay because I was laughing so hard, was when POWELL-PEPPER and HORNE-FRANCIS run into each other in like a little forward 50 stoppage.
What a horror moment.
It was. But Dwayne, so they've kind of like ruined Derm, a couple of talking about, it's two real bullish players going at each other, and Dwayne kind of just chimes in and goes, they went so hard at each other, they nearly knocked each other's hyphens out.
Oh, what? That's so Dwayne. That's ridiculous.
That's incredible. I was just like, no one's going to bring up hyphens
who just grabs that in the moment?
Because he wasn't
out of thin air, like, hyphens.
He's probably, I wonder if he's that prepared that he's like, with his fucking 2-liter milk, he's just like some point written down, if those two ever run into each other, I'm going to use this. And then he's just like being like, I've got to fucking chime in here, because it was two others.
Well, Port's full of hyphens, so he's on a winner in that regard.
Yeah. But then he fucking caps it off afterwards when they're talking about like, players like bullish players like that going hard at the ball, and like, and I think Rue goes, you wouldn't want to change him anyway, and like Dwayne then goes, that's like asking Jimmy Barnes to whisper.
What?
He was
nice
just
Adelaide material there.
Yeah, incredible form from Dwayne.
I'm surprised he didn't bring up the Paraka balls when you mentioned two bulls going at it. I could have expected a Paraka reference again there.
Yeah, start talking about chasing cows off the oval.
Well, the sports club, the Paraka Sports Club, are the bulls as well. So probably from that historical note of the cattle farming back in the day.
Yeah. He did finish. He finished off the quarter. That was the highlight. I think the nearly knocked each other's hyphens out was just the best Dwayne, one of the best Dwayneisms. That's in the Hall of Fame for me. When Butters like tried to center, he took a mark late in the quarter, and he could have probably gone for goal. He was like close to 50 out, but he tries to center,
and it was towards Drew.
Yeah, and it kind of just dribbles, and they end up going down the back and kicking a goal, I think, out of
my body. My soul just like left my body in that moment, and my body was just kind of in suspended animation, just watching that unfold. I was like, of course,
it was ridiculous.
What do you mean?
Yeah, it
didn't pay off. Like, it was one of those moments where I think Butters is just a bit more ahead of where everyone else's mind is, and Drew's like, oh shit, I got to expect Zach to do something crafty, which you should absolutely expect.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it paid off, it would have looked very good.
Yeah. So when that happened, they flashed to Ken Hinkley on the bench, and Dwayne's gone, and Ken Hinkley takes out another fingernail. But then he goes on to, he's just like, Ken Hinkley, he starts doing a little diatribe about, the 13-year marriage of Ken Hinkley and the Port Adelaide Football Club. And he's just like, this marriage that's coming to an end this year. And it's kind of like, geez, you're talking about fucking marriages ending as part of commentary? And he's like,
divorce,
and it kind of like, there's a silence for a second, and he's just kind of continuing. He's like, it's a 13-year, it's been a bit up and down. The grandparents never really approved, and he starts talking about. Then he goes, some of the older players that are, as the grandparents are like. He just goes on this like little, and it was funny, but it's also just like Dwayne's getting some personal info out there at the moment about
what's going on here, Dwayne.
What he knows about maybe he has chats with being a former player himself, like some things he knows that was just popping out as he was commentating. So. That second quarter, I'd love to watch. I probably won't watch the rest of the game now as a replay, now that we're already recording the podcast, to see
hell no,
what else he pulled out. But that second quarter had plenty of Dwayne for me to be able to take out of it, to at least made it entertaining, and to the point of me pausing to laugh at one point with the hyphens thing. And I did. Then I was like, did I hear that properly? Is that actually what he went? And I went back and watched it again. So, yeah, a small point of joy in another ways, joyless rewatch that was going on this morning for me. So, yeah, hopefully, I know some people out there have their questions about Dwayne as a commentator, but as we've expressed on this podcast before, we enjoy the journey that it is, because you never know what's going to come out, and that was certainly an example of it throughout that second quarter between hyphens and Dante's Peak chat. I was pretty excited about it. So
Yeah,
I sometimes wonder, like, was there half the commentary team going, "What is Dante's Peak?" But they can't obviously say it on air. But like, just
surely they know. Come on,
yeah,
surely.
it's
Who
a
knows?
deal.
Yeah.
There's people I know that don't watch as, like you and I watch movies, but there's people that I know that just don't watch nearly as many movies, and there's surprising ones that I'm
Yeah.
just like, that was a childhood staple for me that they just like never heard of. So it would be interesting to know what the Dante's Peak knowing is out there. But anyway, you ready to get into the segments?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Down, Gray doing brilliantly, getting through to Monfries. That's Gray at his best.
Wilson kicks hard and kicks Crawley.
Robbie! Let him entertain you!
It was a bit of a tougher week on this front this week, I think, for both of us. I do get to go first. I want to just bring up who won last week first, because I think, and I'm going into the Insta story again to double check, but I do believe we had our first 100% winner last week.
Vote.
Yeah. No, I've actually got to find it here now. But last week we had, of course, the vote for you. Your nomination was Rosie's great intercept mark down in the back line that generated a forward 50. I'm trying to, where is it in my Instagram? It's doing this live is a really terrible idea, David. Don't do that. I'm just adding it in there now. I had to edit the highlights and add it in there. But yes, Rosie's last line intercept indeed was our first 100% winner last week. 100% of the votes went to that. I obviously nominated Rioli's no-look handball, which I loved, but I think it's actually a really quintessential kind of Wilson Gray moment. I think that sums it up, that it got 100% of the vote. People loved that one. So that was the winner last week, was Rosie's intercept mark down the back line. I get to go first, and sticking with intercept marks, I'm going with Asava's kind of intercept pack mark, about 8 minutes to go in the second quarter.
It's not really coming in well, though, Derm, is it?
No, but once it hits the deck, once it's forced in.
Radigalia! Good grab.
Great grab.
Kind of just glides across. There was a couple of Sydney players. I can't remember who was involved there, but and a couple of, it was a real proper defender's intercept pack mark where he kind of throws himself into the pack and just makes the space his. Is the tallest one to get to the ball, marks it at the point that the only point that you can get it as a tall, and yeah, a really, really great Asava moment. One that he's showing us more and more of in the last few weeks, which I'm really, really impressed with. And that was a great mark, and I'm glad to get Asava into any content again at the moment, because I'm just loving what he's doing.
If I remember correctly, he was fairly well congratulated for that effort.
Yes.
On the day. Yeah. Great shout. Love it. Yeah. Asava's our contested mark beast at the moment, which I'm all for. So my nomination, I am going to harken back to a common theme of mine last year, and that was Butter's inboard kick to Joe Richards in the third quarter.
Visentini could stretch him down forward.
They've got it in Butter's hands. Chips it inside. Well, Rioli protected then. Oh, and he's given him one as well, Rioli.
Don't get it reversed. Gee, that's a beautiful kick. He actually identified Richards. That came off the centre of his foot. He knew exactly where he was kicking that ball. I think it surprised Richards even.
Not a whole lot to say, just sublime skills, and picking a player out across the body is always kind of satisfying to watch, particularly off the boot of Zach Butters. And it was to give Richards that first opportunity where he unfortunately hit the post. But had he kicked that goal, you mentioned the Rosie one from that quarter, things potentially could have been a bit different had we taken those couple of half chances. But the Butters kick inboard, drew the admiration of the commentary team as well. It was it was lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, Butters had a few moments on the weekend where he had some really nice kicks. Obviously, we just talked about that one that didn't go quite well, but that was more being ahead of the game of others. But he had...
That could have been up there. That could have been nominated because it was crafty. Just everyone else get on the same page, please.
Yeah. Imagine having a team full of Zach Butters. Like, that would be an interesting dynamic. Be a bit short in height, but I think you'd just... tenacity and skill might do a lot for you as well. A couple of really good ones out of a pretty shit match, I think, but still some good quality there. So let's get to the goal of the week.
Monfrez has kicked a goal. Unbelievable. Haven't seen anything like that. It's gone at right angle.
Flashpoint. Stevie Motlop. What a time. Oh! He is floating on air now.
Just jabbing with the music. Jamie gets to go first this week. I reckon there's a couple of decent options this week, regardless of the result. So...
a couple of decent options.
Might be it, but, I'll see where you go first.
Before I go to mine, one thing that always makes me laugh in that little Hutto grab from the Stevie Motlop thing is just that random commentator who just goes the whoa in the background. It just, I don't know who it is now. That does it. It just always makes me laugh hearing it. The Hutto's commentary is perfect in that moment, but it makes me laugh. Anyway, my goal of the week nomination, we've actually spoken about it already. It is that SPP long bomb.
Farrell coming off halfback, Vicentini. Butters going to play it out. Powell-Pepper blasts it long. Finally some love.
Well done by Farrell to come forward off that slap forward by Grundy.
A great piece of dynamic play out of the centre. He comes up, gets the possession. He was in a bit of a stiff army kind of mood, SPP, but seals the deal from long range. It's a nice piece of vision to watch on an otherwise terrible afternoon.
Yes, it was when I watched it back, because I obviously was watching the full replay this morning and didn't get to the last couple, but I watched some mini stuff and I'd kind of completely forgotten about that goal because I think that was, it was close to the end of the game, and then when I watched it back, geez, that's a fucking roost. That was my top choice as well, so a very good one by you. But I will go. My second choice was, I actually almost put Richard's goal after the siren up there, partly because it is actually a really great finish from distance, and so I guess call it honourable mention to Joe Richards, and also just the vibes, just us just cheering it. My biggest fist pump of the day was for that one. I gotta
more gallows humour.
Exactly.
This means nothing. Well, and in commentary, Derm was like, you never know, like this small bit of percentage that they save could make the difference, and it's like, high hopes for us Port fans in that regard. Derm.
Similar to North Melbourne, so I think we'll just dial back the percentage talk until it's like, it's just not the getting the wins and the percentage together is going to, like, one or the other may not get us there. Getting both together is going to be but I love the optimism anyway. That's I guess commentators have to provide that regardless of the result. So my nomination is going to go to there was JHF's Jason Horne-Francis crumb goal in the second quarter.
Vicentini forward. Georgiades the crummer. Not his usual role. Horne-Francis, the Hornets. Bang!
And it made chaos happen. It made Port Adelaide play instinctively from that moment. No one is settled forward of the footy, including the opposition's back.
Weird one. It kind of comes from a little bit of like Georgiades trying to take possession, can't quite get it. And I think that just the aesthetics of it, like Horne-Francis seems to like gather it and look around and be like, oh, wait, I can do this. So he just puts it through.
Yeah. There's a gap right there.
Exactly.
Dribble it through.
Yeah. And, it's just one of those things you love about Horne-Francis is his ability to do that kind of stuff in those forward 50 stoppages. He's got a lot of those kind of goals. Not all of them dribblers like he did that one, but he can't. Even that part of it I think is really great too, because he assesses the situation and kind of like, this is like the way through, because there's a lot of contest around him. So I think he just was like, if I put this on the ground, it's probably the best chance of it getting through without knowing what's diving in around me at this current moment to possibly smother. If I just put it on the ground, and it's probably the best chance. So a little bit of quick cerebral stuff from JHF in that moment, and what I love about him around the forward 50 stoppage, beyond his this year not so much, his set shot and target forward stuff has been great in the past and will be again. But yeah, his ability out of the forward 50 stoppage is sneaky great as well, and that was one of those ones. I don't know if that was actually a stoppage or if it was like a ball came in and came to ground and was a bit of a contest, but kind of a stoppage style situation, a ball on the ground and a lot of congestion.
Bit of chaos.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, love a JHF goal. Haven't had as many of them this year, unfortunately, but glad to get one in again. So yeah, that's about it from on the nominations for the segments. And I guess it's time to
head over to Instagram to cast your votes. Everyone listening and or watching.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. If you're listening as it comes out, anyone following on Instagram, is good point to bring up. Good by you, Jamie. I generally get these up about 7 o'clock on Wednesday. So if we're recording as we usually do on a Tuesday evening, as we are right now, I get these up about on Wednesday evening so people can do their, and then it stays up on Instagram for 24 hours in the stories. So go to the Instagram stories from about 6 to 7 o'clock on Wednesday evening. And if it's not there yet, it will be soon. And then you can vote on which one you would like to vote for the segments. And looking forward to putting together a bracket for who's going to win the ultimate moment and goal at the end of the year as well. There's been some good ones this year, despite the weird year it's been. So looking forward.
There always is. There's always some moments.
Yeah, it's part of the fun of when we leave these games, especially because I think I leaned over to both you and Aaron on the night and said, "Did we just cancel these segments?" Like that was where I was at on the night. But you get a couple of days.
Can them.
You get a couple of days away from it and you go, oh, fuck it, we can find something. And I did find something and I was pretty happy with the Asava mark and the goals. So, yeah, no, good stuff. All right, let's get into the Player of the Year votes. Now it's time for the CREEDCAST Player of the Year voting.
PP, he looks like a mad cunt. Look, he can't.
I'm a mad cunt whenever I listen to myself. That's why I played that at the end there.
Nice.
Yeah, I get to do the votes first this week. So really, we mentioned off air before we started that it was a really interesting week for the votes because it's hard in these games. There's not a whole lot of highlights, obviously, and it's different efforts you want to reward, particularly not as many good ones. So I found it really interesting. Wanted to shout out a couple that I kind of almost got in there, but I have to admit I teased the idea of Burton just to be a contrarian a little bit. There's at least in the one vote, because I
love that.
There's a lot of numbers that were good, and I think people need to. I understand the criticism, but I think there's stuff in his game that people need to appreciate as well. And the criticism is valid, but I hope he gets it together, and I can understand why. You can make a case of dropping him. You can make a case for getting him in your best players. That's the weird place he's in, and I don't know how to compartmentalize that and explain it properly. But that's just where I'm at with Burton at the moment. I thought about Richards, thought about even Liddy just giving him a benefit, a tax break, so to speak, being that we're getting to the end of June. It's going to give him a tax break for being a second game player and the impact he had. But so honourable mentions to a couple there. Even if Willem Drew was as flu plagued as he might have been, I thought about him as well. I just think, but it wasn't a great game for getting people into the one vote, but there was a few standouts, I think, still. And in my one spot, I did put Sam Powell-Pepper, who was on my watch list last week. And at one point this week, I was considering it, but I think throughout the game, he did grow into it, considering we did throw him into the middle a bit more. He was thrown around a little bit more. He had the 20 possessions at 80% disposal, which in a game that we were somewhat lazy with the ball at times, I thought that was pretty good. 9 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s. He had the 8 ground ball gets, which I think was second best for us. A couple clearances with his 20% time in the middle and a big goal at the end. Not that it meant much in the context of the game, but I thought a little bit more of the Sam Powell-Pepper I want. He needs to, I think, I'd love to see him do more than that, but the game it was an interesting one it was just a shit game. So I think he did a decent amount for the opportunities he had. I've thrown Josh Sin in at my 2 votes. Not one I had there a couple of days ago when I was starting to think about it without looking at the stats. But when I thought about I think I did say to you at the game as well. I leaned over at one point. I was just like, he's had a great start to this game, and the 15 disposal, 80%, 7 1%ers, which led the team, 6 marks, 4 tackles, 3 intercepts, couple of score involvements. 7 1%ers lead the team. He used the ball reasonably well. I think a lot of that was earlier in the game, and it's unfortunate that we just couldn't. And he did get mismatched at times, but I think just for his role still growing, this is the first year he's really more or less been a first 22 player. I think this was one of his better games considering the situation it was, and I was really quite pleased with what he did with the opportunities he had on the day. And again, he was one of the few that really locked in early when the rest of the team was kind of fucking doorknobs out there, to paraphrase patches over my head.
without the without the vulgar
without the cancelable content.
Nice.
Given my 3 votes to Connor Rosie, I think he could have been 4 or 5 as well. But I'll get to my 4 or 5 in a moment. But I think 25 disposals, 6 clearances, 8 score involvements, which I think led the team. Almost 400 gained. I think that decent numbers for someone who's thrown into the middle more, because I think his meters gained looks better across the season because he's been more behind the ball and a little bit more free to use it at times. The 20. We touched on it before, but he had 27 pressure acts, which led the entirety of both teams. So those numbers have been down when he's been behind the ball, but now he's inside more. His pressure act numbers are up again. One of those small things that people don't notice as much, although people listen to us now are probably like, that's all you ever talk about with him. But one of those things we like to highlight to show that his impact off the ball as well. I gave my 4 votes, and maybe it's just because it's the Sava season, but I was just like,
yes.
My 4 votes for Sava Radaglia. I said to you at one point on the day, his 16 disposals are 87%, 7 of those contested. He's using the ball better than his history says now. Like, he's picking out targets, and yes, they're still easy. Like, they're relatively low pressure, so it's what you want him to be able to do. But the mocker on him in the past was he fucking burns the ball at the easiest of opportunities. So I said to you at one point, I did a little bit of like Happy's learned how to putt, like from Happy Gilmore, like, because he's starting to just use the ball a little bit better. Like, it's nothing outstanding, but that's what I want from one of my big central defenders. If you're gonna have 16 disposals, use it at 80+%. Get your 7 marks, 2 of them contested, 11 intercepts led the team as well. That's just, in a game like that, there's not too much to write home about, but I think he did his job as best as he has. A couple of moments where he could, the matchups were the ball was coming in pretty far too easily at times, and in 2 perfect spots for their opposition forward leading patterns to work to as well. So, and there's some structural breakdown stuff that I can't isolate to Asava, so I've still given him the 4 votes. My 5 votes, obviously, Zach Butters. I think not going to go down as one of the top 10 games of Zach Butters' career or anything like that, but I think he was doing a lot to try to drag the team to a better standard of play than they were giving on the day. 28 disposals, 10 contested, 6 clearances, 6 score involvements. His first goal of the year, which is insane to me when I thought about it on the day when you brought that up. Just hadn't thought about the fact he hadn't kicked a goal.
That's right, yeah. And everyone got around him like it was his first goal ever. After he kicked it.
It's funny that the players know these things, and it just shows those little things that probably get talked about throughout the weeks of training and whatnot. So he had the eight marks as well, a couple of intercepts, 10 ground ball gets, which I think was the best on ground for either team as well. So just all around, just a good a great Zach Butters game, just unfortunately, just because of the malaise that was around with everything, it just didn't look as good as it could have been. And he probably had to work harder to getting those 28 disposals than a game where, but that's the testament to him that he worked that hard and tried a lot to get things right. So yeah, that's my votes. Very interested to see where yours went, because it was a tough to kind of metabolize where mine were going to end up. So
I agree. Honorable mention for me goes to Josh Sin, and much like you, Jerry Richards as well. Good games in their own right. Some stats that are good for the eyes, but honorable mentions on my side of the fence. My one vote goes to Willem Drew for his 17 disposals, 7 contested, 275 meters gain, 5 marks. 2 of those contested. He took a really nice contested mark. I think it was on the half forward flank on the eastern side of the ground,
That
which
was the one
was
that he should have got a
juicy.
fucking 50 for, right? Was that one?
Oh, you're testing me now. I just focused more on the mark than what happened after it.
There
But
was one where
um,
he took the mark and then Papley fucking was just getting into him and kind of held him on the ground. Like, it was like, how is that not a 50?
oh yeah, right. I remember the whole crowd around us just
Mm,
getting up in arms about it because consistency is all we want.
yeah.
Anyway, 3 inside 50s. He had 25 pressure acts, which was equal second on the
Mm,
ground, 12 of those in the defensive half. 8 tackles, which is Willem numbers, and 4 1%ers. So good on him for the one vote. My 2 votes goes to young Asava. um, yeah, look, the shortcomings on the day, yeah, noteworthy in
mhm.
some respects, but also
Yeah, that turnover in
you
the
can make
first
a
first
case.
minute or two was, but
It was just a poor, like, A, you can rush it, in my opinion.
mhm,
B, if you're going to hand pass it to someone, pass it to the goal side of that guy's body
yeah,
because then he can fumble it.
mhm,
And again, on that note, the deliberate rush behind that Kane Farrell got done for, that thankfully got cannoned into the post by Joel Amartey.
very
Bit
very
of
funny.
shit. It's
Yeah,
a bit of shit because you know what Kane was doing, but you know that it never gets paid. So,
there's a rule in place
the-
about he never took position. Like, it was, and it was a fumbly, quick bang bang. Like, I get that
and he
players
did actually slip at the end.
he
Although we all
did.
knew what he was trying to do, he did actually slip over the line.
These
So,
players do that every fucking week, 20,
is that deliberate? If you
5 or 6
slip,
times a game sometimes, because that's how they.
just because you've deliberately gotten to within a ruler's length of the goal mouth or
Mhm.
score line, and then you legitimately slip, yeah, one would think they would cancel it out. But anyway, neither here nor there. Joel Amartey Party, yeah, nearly snapped the post with how hard he kicked the ball into it.
Yeah,
But where was I? Asava Radagalia, 16 disposals. Yeah, you've already gone through all the stats, 7 of which contested, 11 intercepts, which is just fantastic in the absence of Alier as well.
mhm.
Um, his marking credentials, 7 of which he took on the day, 2 contested and 5 intercepts marked. So yeah, just nice Asava numbers. I've got SPP at 3 for me. I really liked his
Mhm.
game as a whole once it's all packaged up and wrapped in a bow. With his 20 disposals, some ground ball gets, the disposal efficiency which you mentioned, good meters gain, marking, which is on certainly on your radar when it comes to SPP. 1 goal, 1 score involvements,
I
15
made it the
pressure
last
acts,
couple of
just
weeks.
nice. He
I
has,
think it
he
was really
has.
just that GWS game. He just didn't want to touch the cold football. Like, it's fucking big
His
role.
hands were frozen,
Yeah.
they were just blocks of ice at
Yeah.
the end of his arms. But I've got Rosie at 4, Butters at 5. I think Batman and Robin, funnily enough, B and R to start their
Mm.
surnames. Um,
And now my brain's going,
yeah, if I was
make a
much
shirt.
better at digital art or art as a whole, maybe there's something there. A bit of fan art, but
See if I can.
getting way off topic.
Yeah,
Rosie is 4 votes, Butters is 5, for all the reasons that one would assume. Rosie's pressure acts definitely pushed him up there, but 8 score involvements, which I think led us
mm.
as a team. 6 clearances, even in games where he has been parked in the midfield. Pretty sure he still gets shaded for clearances by other players such as Butters and whatnot, and Ollie Wines, for example. But he lifted a little bit in that regard. So it's a bit of like, yeah, you've put up good numbers, but yeah, did we rob Peter and not pay Paul
Yeah.
like you mentioned? Mm,
Mhm.
that's another discussion. But he can only do what he's asked to do,
Exactly. That's
and
why I don't blame
those
him
numbers
for.
justify it.
That's the funny thing out of the discussion of the game. Is like, I don't want to see, right, like, some, there's some chatter out there like, oh, don't put Rosie in midfield against us. Like, he did his job. It's just like, yeah, there is those questions about the balance, and Butters and Rosie being in there together predominantly most of the time maybe doesn't work quite as well as we'd hoped it would. And yeah, and as you mentioned off the top, Ollie Wines was sneaky, a bit not sneaky for us because we talk about it a lot, but for some others, I think, yeah, it's sneaky, a big miss. Particularly, I think Port Adelaide fans are pretty cognizant of it, but I think the wider AFL world doesn't realise what Ollie Wines has done for us over the last 18 months. So it's just wild considering we won a Brownlow medal 4 years ago. Like, it's just weird to say, but it's where we're at.
He did a well-deserved Brownlow.
Absolutely. Record Brownlow haul at the time, equal record at the time. So, yeah. Burn the tape, let it fucking die, like just a terrible, terrible death. Because
it'll die a terrible, terrible death.
Yep. Fuck that game.
Oh, wrong person. You will die a terrible, terrible death. That is a Simpsons deep cut, and
I'm trying to picture the voice because I can hear. Like, I was seeing.
I think it's like a radio clairvoyant, and people call in to ask for their
You're doing it very good.
Future.
You're doing it very good. It sounded like a Hank Azaria-esque, like voice.
Harry Shearer.
Harry Shearer.
Oh no! I think that would be a Dan Castellaneta.
Okay. Your Simpsons knowledge is a lot more deep than mine, though. I've watched a lot of it over the years.
It is, yeah. It is, yeah. Unashamed.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't think my buddy Shay ever listens because he's an idiot. But I also love him. He's one of my best friends from over in the US. But he loves the Simpsons as well. He's randomly Snapchatting me just sometimes when he's
shout out to all the Simpsons fans out there.
Yeah. No, I sent him. He was. He's really going to be mad at me for mentioning this, but he's not going to listen to it anyway, so it doesn't matter. He was at a bar. He works in sports media over there, and he was at a bar because NBA finals are finished, so he's getting a little bit more time off, and he was having his zins and some vodka, and was just enjoying some time off from work. And I made him the meme, like when Lenny's taken the zero accident days sign off. I made him a meme and sent it to him, like 0 days and zins and Tito's. Like, literally just did that today. So, and then he
nice.
So, shout out Shay, who doesn't listen to the podcast, but he does have a Port Adelaide scarf in his apartment.
Forever in our thoughts.
Yeah,
he's not dead either. He's just.
I haven't heard from him since he was at the bar with his Zins and Tito, so I should check in with him later on. But anyway, let's finish off getting to what we've got coming up in fucking 2 days. Like, literally 48 hours from now, we will be finished our round 16 game, which is insane. We've got Thursday night footy obviously coming up, Port Adelaide, Carlton. Side note, sports bet odds are 168 for us, 219 for the Blues. Well, I found it funny today, and why I haven't noticed this before, and maybe it's just where my brain's at, and I'm looking for anything to bring me joy when it comes to football. But you know how they do the sports bet odds on the AFL website, and like they have it, and then it says the team to win. Ours says power to win 168, and I'm like, oh, we're the only team that has the team song name in the sports bet odd. Like every week.
Yeah.
Power to win.
We've got the power to win. Yeah.
We've got the power to win
nice.
At 168 odds. Power to rule. Yeah. So that's something that amused me today, and hopefully everyone else isn't turning off the podcast as they listen to me just go into that. But anyway, Carlton, Port, Thursday night footy at Adelaide Oval this Thursday, 7 o'clock on Thursday night. Weather looking just wintry, but the rain that we're currently experiencing, quite a heavy amount of rain over the last 24 hours, but it's going to ease by Thursday from the looks of things. So probably going to be some frigid temperatures though. Before we get into looking at the injury updates, just how are you feeling going into this one? We're favoured, but we were favoured last week, so that doesn't fucking matter.
How does one feel when they're a Port Adelaide supporter and there's a game that you should win and it's at home? Who fucking knows? I'll attend because I am a glutton for punishment,
duty bound,
but also a hopeful, for want of a better term. Look, it's a very, very common theme with Port Adelaide this year, as it turns out. It's if effort, equals win. If no effort,
Mm,
embarrassing loss potentially.
yeah. Does it also?
It just who honestly knows? We'll
Yeah.
get some pieces back. They have pieces, some very important pieces missing,
Mm,
but ultimately it's effort intensity. Same gap in days break between Carlton and Port Adelaide, both playing on the Saturday. Carlton obviously have to travel over,
mhm.
um, so probably won't account for much. Hopefully, our players are a lot healthier and less sick than they were last week.
Yeah.
And the Jack Lukosius news is interesting, although I don't think he'll get rushed back in. I think if he does get picked, he'll play Magpies. But
Mm,
Georgiadis needs some fucking help, and we
yeah.
need to get it in that forward zone with a
Hmm.
lot more effectiveness and more often
Yeah. I mean, that's
compared to the Sydney game.
yeah. I mean, let's mention the injuries quickly, and then I'll ask you. We'll go back to that because it's an interesting quandary to bring up. Obviously, the big news for us is Aaliyah and, as you just mentioned, Lukosius are available this week. So, Lukosius deemed fit to play. Aaliyah obviously fit to play, and Aaliyah only having missed a week, he will come back into the side. You would expect. I'll touch on Carlton's quickly before we go back to the Lukosius one because it is just an interesting one. Um, the big one for Carlton, so they've got like the likes of Sam Walsh, Harry Mackay, Nick Newman. They've got a few players that are out and going to be out this week. The big one pertinent to this week, as far as how they've been playing recently, Jacob Wiedering rolled his ankle during the game against the Kangaroos. Everyone was a little bit concerned about it, but he's had, according to the Carlton website, and I'll read this verbatim, has recovered well from rolled ankle in Saturday's game and will aim to train tomorrow, so tomorrow being Wednesday, to be available to play. So the short turnaround might help us in whether Jacob Wiedering, either if he does play, he's going to be probably a bit stiff in that ankle because it's still a test, and we're literally 45 hours from fucking first bounce. So it's a short turnaround for someone with a rolled ankle, and it will be stiff. It will. I would imagine even if he's deemed fit and it's nothing wrong with the ankle structurally, it will be maybe a little bit tighter and stiffer than as someone who has extensive experience in ankle injuries and reconstruction and everything in between. Yeah, you can be okay with your ankle and still it can still be quite concerning to you when you're moving. So, but he is a professional athlete, and I am a bum with a podcast. But yeah. That's the big one for Carlton, so that's going to be an interesting one for our forward line because that obviously Wiedering and his defense versus our forward line, but we'll go through that more when we do squads. But Lukosius, it's a quandary because my immediate thought is, yeah, he has to go back through the Magpies for having missed so much time, but there is that part of you that goes, fuck, we need the help. The two rucks thing really isn't working as a forward option. Do you just, if he is fit, do you just go, fuck it, just bring him back into the ones? But because if you're going to play him in the Sandful, then as far as the body stuff goes, but it depends how out of touch he is, and he's been out for a while. My thought is he has to go back through the Magpies. Like I think just when you've been a bigger player has been out for that long.
Zerk Thatcher had to, so
yeah.
fairly similar. Long-term injuries.
Yeah.
With Lukosius, it was the back that's caused him issues most recently, and Zerk Thatcher, it was wholly and solely to do with his back. Sounds like fairly similar ways that they got injured, like in the gym. So who knows what regimes some of our players are doing, or whether they're pushing a little bit too hard in some of those back workouts. But that's probably a recent example that you could go off of.
Yeah.
Who changes though are really interesting for me because Aaliyah absolutely just comes back in. But like you mentioned, Burton actually put up some pretty good numbers. Sin had great moments. Lockie Jones, they would obviously persist with because they clearly view him as the best 22 player, and he's had one game in after his layoff from that hamstring. So that's going to be really interesting to see who they take out of the squad that played on Saturday because like we mentioned in our squad show, the squad on paper it looks good. The team on paper, that is, it looks fairly decent. But some interesting calls are going to be made, and I don't actually know for the first time in a little while. I don't actually know how I would make up the side.
Mm-hmm.
Because Because look, to be honest, like I said, it it doesn't really matter. Um, Whoever Alir and potentially Lukosius come back in for, team's going to be good on paper. Like I said, it just depends what their attitude is on the day and how, and for what of an extended period of time that attitude lasts for, either good or bad, for me. So it's going to be a surprise. And Ollie Wines is a TBC, but I dare say they'll stick on the cautious approach with him. If it was potentially a Saturday or a Sunday, he may play.
They've already
but
said
it's
in
a
the
Thursday.
extended stuff from the website, it's Ollie Wines will miss a second consecutive game.
Okay, there you go.
They've said,
why list him as TBC then?
I did
Just
want to
do
bring
1
that
week.
up. There was a slight bit of concern for me. Like, is that knee injury maybe going to be like they've reevaluating it, and it's either because
it's longer. You think?
Well, why doesn't it
perhaps?
say 1 to 2 weeks? Like,
I
that's
have no
why
idea.
They've just said he's going to miss this weekend, and his, timeline is to be, so like
confirmed.
yeah, that's what I'm like. Is there a little bit more, maybe some concern there, which is weird because he played out the game after the injury last week, but then it is just a weird one for me. I find that concerning, but hopefully he's fine. It's not like he's got a massive history of these kind of injuries. But yeah, I thought there was a point of interest to how the injury list was released because he was just listed. I think he had a timeline last week, and now this week he doesn't. So yeah, that's maybe just one to watch. Not to get too crazy about it, but yeah, last week he was listed as 1 to 2 weeks. This week he's TBC. So that's just an oddity to me in how it's been released. Maybe it's nothing. I could just be overreacting, but I think it's it's not. They just said he's going to miss a second consecutive week, and haven't said, but he will be soon back. Because the last couple of weeks it was Lukosius will be back soon. He's resumed running, and now it's just Wines, is just TBC. So, maybe they don't. Maybe it's not serious, but maybe they're not exactly sure when they'll bring him back. Maybe they're going to put him on a program for a couple of weeks to just maybe build up, because it was a medial ligament thing, or strain, or something like that, I think.
Okay.
So whether there's just maybe
take note of what it was.
Yeah, maybe there's just something a little bit. And I could be wrong on that. That's just what I'm trying to just grab that from my memory rather than actually looking at it. But yeah, I thought that's nothing to do with this week's game at all. But that was a little ring that went off in my mind when I saw the TBC. I was like, that's odd, because last week he had a timeline, this week he doesn't. Like, why does that happen? Even with Lukosius, it's been a flexible timeline at times, but it has always had a timeline attached to it. So I just find that somewhat concerning. But I won't get too much into that. Until we know more, it's not worth worrying about. But I do want to see Ollie Wines back sooner rather than later. While we technically have a heartbeat in this season, while it's it's a fleeting
dithering.
Yeah. That's about it from me, I think, unless you have anything else you want to touch on. We've wrapped one up, I think, probably within 2 hours today, which is a rarity, but I think
goes to show the type of game it was.
Yeah, the fact we got to the forward line and we were just like, there's not much to say. They didn't fucking see enough of it. Like, Willie Rioli was good when he had his 7 disposals, but he didn't have enough of the ball. Like, that's the kind of game it was. So, cheers everyone for listening. As always, I've got nothing more to say. Jamie, you got anything more?
Thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate all your support. And let's hope for a win.
Kind of pair.
Can be.